G'day everyone, Damien here from Integrity Property Education. Today's blog video is about houses versus units. Which one should you buy? Some people like units, some people like houses. Let's do some analysis and talk about it. Right, first of all, we've got to understand our golden rules of property investment. Now, there's really three golden rules of property investment that I think about and that I think are really important. The first golden rule of property investment is to buy where it's booming. Buy where the market's going up. This is why we're investing, to make money. And the big money is made in capital growth. There's no doubt about it. That's where the hundreds of thousands of dollars are made, not the hundreds of dollars. So, first rule, buy where it's booming. Second rule though, is you must make sure your properties pay for themselves. Now, if you've got to make sure your properties pay for themselves, then you need to look at the cash flow. We'll talk about that in a second. And then the last golden rule is never ever sell. When you sell your investment property, you kill the goose that lays the golden eggs. If you don't know how to get the money out of a property without selling it, then you need to learn more about finance. Keep watching these blog videos. So let's talk about how that relates to houses and units. Well, if we're going to buy where it's booming, actually, in a lot of cases, it might lean towards units, because often factors that create booms is a reduction in supply and an increase in demand. So often inner city suburbs have a reduction of supply because they're already built out. But depending on the zoning, you can see an oversupply of apartments built that can create a problem. So sometimes apartments are good, sometimes they're not so good in that regard. But here's the one thing that we know about capital growth, is it's actually the land that goes up in value, not the building itself. In fact, the building itself goes down in value. We get to claim the depreciation of it every year on tax. It's the land that is valuable. And if you have a look at a lot of these inner city properties, the actual value is in the land component, not the building itself. And often when people buy inner city houses, they knock the house over because the house is worthless in the grand scheme of things, and it's the land that's worth so much. So if you buy an apartment, what are you actually buying? You're buying a very small portion. If you've got 300 apartments on a block of land, you're buying a very small portion of that land. You're buying 1/300th of that portion of land. Whereas if you buy a house, all the land is yours. And that's very, very important in terms of your long-term capital growth, because remember, that's where the big money is. So from a capital growth perspective, houses are going to win hands down over units every day of the week anyway. Now let's talk about rule number 2, make sure they pay for themselves. Now why do they have to pay for themselves? Why not? Surely we can have a couple of negative properties. Well, guess what? If your properties don't pay for themselves, you're not going to be able to own very many. So some people go, oh, that's okay, I've got a good income and I'm going to service those properties that are negative cash flow. But here's the thing, you're still going to run out. And the guy who's got 10 properties that are performing at 5% capital growth a year is going to make more money than the person who's got 2 properties on 10% per year. Because the person on 2 properties 10%, that's a cumulative 20%. The person who's got 10 properties at 5%, it's a cumulative 50%. But the thing is, if you have negative cash flow properties, then you're not going to be able to buy more than a couple, because it'll chew up all your independent or your disposable income, and the banks will stop lending you money. So they must pay for themselves. Now, how do we know if a property is going to pay for itself? Well, actually, there are 9 factors associated with whether a property will pay for itself, the cash flow of property. A lot of people just focus on rent, and they do so foolishly because the 9 factors make a difference. So, what are they? Get a piece of paper, draw a line down the middle, 2 columns, income and expenses. And at the top of your income column, you want to be writing down rent received and the tax return received, very important. And then on the expenses column, we've got a whole heap of things. We've got loan repayments, we've got body corporate fees, we've got rates, we've got insurance, we've got rental management, we've got maintenance, and then the last one is depreciation. So very, very important to consider all those factors. Now, with an apartment, we usually have a very big body corporate fee. When you buy a house, there is no body corporate fee. All of the other expenses are about the same. So why would you buy an apartment when you can buy a house that doesn't have a body corporate fee and is getting the same rental yields and all the other costs are relatively the same. What we analyse thousands of property opportunities every month on behalf of our clients, thousands of them, literally, trying to pick the very best. And we know, time and time again, units just don't stack up when it comes to cash flow. And anyone who owns a unit will know exactly what I'm talking about. Body corporates are nasty. And as time goes by and the building gets older, that body corporate fee keeps going up and up and up, particularly when they want to increase the sinking fund, which is the fund they put all the long-term maintenance money in for the pool and the elevator and things like that. Okay, and then finally, if we're never going to sell our property, golden rule number 3, if we're never going to sell, what sort of property do we want to have long term? Do we want to have an apartment or do we want to have a house? Well, what's got more flexibility? Over the life of owning that property, we're going to need to improve it, refresh it every 20 years or so, maybe do some renovations and things like that. Now with an apartment, what have you got? You can put a new kitchen, new bathroom, and that's it. And then the rest of the complex, you're really at the mercy of the body corporate committee and whether every other owner wants to agree with you on it. When you've got a block of land with a house on it, you can do whatever you want. You can extend it, re-landscape it, repaint it, knock it over, build a new one. You have complete flexibility. So if you're never going to sell, if you're going to buy properties that pay for themselves and you're going to buy where it's booming, houses are definitely the way to go. You just can't argue with the logic and the numbers. Now, some people end up buying units because they believe in this rule that says, you buy within 5 to 10 kilometres of the city, and the only thing that they can afford is therefore 1, 2 bedroom units close to the city. Now, can I tell you, that's a trap and it's a fallacy. All suburbs perform the same capital growth wise, just over time, and there's like a ripple effect that occurs. Usually the inner city goes and then it pushes out. Over time, they all perform the same because they're all relative to each other. So don't fall into that trap. It's not right for a start. The 5 to 10k rule is actually a myth. It's all about cash flow. So remember the 3 golden rules. Buy where it's booming, make sure they pay for themselves and never sell. If you're going to follow those 3 rules, houses are going to serve you better than units. That's it from me today. Make sure you've liked our page. Make sure you are subscribing to our YouTube channel and following us on Twitter, and you can also find us on LinkedIn. Until next time, cheers.